Welcome back to So, What's Your Process, the show where we talk with creatives from all different fields about what they do and how they do it. I'm Kyle Dalsimer.
And I'm Allie Dalsimer.
And Allie, you've brought us a really exciting guest today, haven't you?
I have. I'm super excited. So I first met today's guest when she zoomed into my book club. We were reading her very first historical fiction novel called Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, which has gone on to win a bazillion awards. And she has gone on to write several more books, not just historical fiction, but she's like expanded into other genres, including writing a book about a bicycle journey she and her husband took when they rode their bikes across the country. She's got a children's book. She's got 2 new short stories coming out. She also does 2 podcasts. She reads like a crazy lady and does reviews for all these books. And in her free time, she ballroom dances and is also a grandma. And I just don't even have like a clue how she does that. But for now, welcome to the show, my friend, Teri Brown.
Thank you for having me. And when you said like a crazy lady, I thought, well, that pretty much sums it up right there. That's
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I can't even get around that. I mean, so like literally you have published, I think it's now 5 books in 4 years. You've won a ton of awards. Your books do so well. Yeah, she keeps winning first place on books that I get honorable mentions on. So there's that. But
do not diss the honorable mentions. You should
no.
I
put them up on my website. They're good.
Absolutely.
We love an honorable mention.
She even got the first on the Insapir Award. I got the second. So I'm just saying.
Oh, look at that.
Not competitive at all here.
Oh, that's amazing.
But but seriously, for real. I mean, you do the 2 podcasts, one by yourself and one you co-host. You got the short stories coming out. And you read. And so so Teri's got a newsletter for those who are interested in books and want to know, what people think of different books. I mean, you've got this newsletter, and in it, there's never less than like half a dozen book reviews. And her last one was like, "I'm so sorry, I only read 4 books this week," and it was like, or whatever it was.
This month.
It
was 4, and then
3 others
read 3. So I was able to at least put out 7 this time.
So you still put out the same amount.
Put out the same amount.
You just had to outsource a little bit.
Yes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I mean, honestly, my legitimate question is like, when do you sleep? And are you in fact a speed reader?
So I sleep at night like normal folks. I sleep about 8 hours a night, and I have something planned most of the time that I'm awake. And so I'm always doing something. That's how I get as much done. And in terms of speed reading, I don't think I'm an actual speed reader, but I am a fast reader. So it is easy for me to read about an hour and a half or 2 in the evenings and finish 2 novels a week that way.
Wow.
So it's not speed reading. I've watched people do speed reading, and I do not do this with the pages, flip, but I do read quickly.
Yeah, that's crazy. I read at night, and I'm still reading the 5th volume of Diana Gabaldon's 900-page book for like my 6th week now.
900 page books, though, there's something about those that, I don't know, it gets into your psyche because they're big and they're huge. I can get through 300 books, 300 page books a whole lot faster than I can get through 1 900-page book.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's something about, in your mind, you can finish. Whereas that 900 one, your mind is going, yeah, there's no way. There's no way. And so you don't read it. I don't think I read as much or as fast. It's like I get to a point, it's like, yeah, I'm done for today.
Yeah.
But if I have a 300-page book and I'm at page, 260, I'll say, I'm going to finish. But if I'm in a 900-page book and I'm at page 260, I say, I'm going to bed now.
You're going to bed. It's,
right?
It's the difference between the 5K and running the marathon.
Yeah. Well, that's the process for reading.
That's
so
very
I
funny.
actually do have a question, though, because, when I met you, you had just written, you were getting into actually, I think you had also, I think you had written Enemy Like Mine, but it hadn't come out yet.
Okay.
I remember looking at the cover when it came out.
Yeah.
But you were very much an author of historical fiction, character-driven historical fiction.
Right.
That's what you were doing. And just another plug for those who like that genre. I mean, your books really have won a number of awards, and they're very good, beautifully written, eloquent. But I now that you're moving into these other genres, and you've got a children's book, and so there's a book in the works that is a comedic look at menopause.
Yes.
Which I love. And I was talking to someone earlier, and I actually have a friend named Peg as well. So there's like 3 sales right here, right now already. But I'm wondering, how has your process shifted? Like when you're doing historical fiction, I'm guessing it's a very different process than when you're writing, a children's book, or if you're writing, the double-butted adventure about your bicycle trip, or how is that different?
So first, I want to say that I am still character driven, just because I'm not doing historical fiction. And by the way, I have another idea for historical fiction that I'll probably do next. So I don't like to be put in a box. I really can't stand it when someone says, "Oh, so you are a historical fiction author." And I'm like, no, I'm a character driven fiction author, and I write a character. And when it comes to my mind, what the character is, I know where he or she needs to be. And the first 3 books I wrote, they needed to be historical. There was no way to write the story I needed to write without them being historical. And then the one that will be coming out in the spring of 26 is called Peg Unhinged. And she definitely, without a doubt, had to be modern. There's no way to talk about menopause as we know it today and put her in a historical sense. Most women didn't even live to menopause in, the 1890s. And those that did certainly weren't talking about it. And so, that kind of, I'm very character driven. And so wherever they are, in terms of the process, I think the only thing that is really significantly different is like how much research needs to be done and when it needs to be done. So with my historical fictions, I do a lot of research and then I start writing. And then I do some research while I'm writing for something very specific. Like I have an idea that I think this would move the story forward, but I have to make sure that actually could have happened. Was there Brill cream in 1939? I know it was around 45, but was it around, those kinds of things. But those are very quick little just to make sure. And then I do more research at the end when I realize that there are places that I need to fill in a little more. Like I need more information for my reader. When it comes to like the modern one that I wrote, I really didn't need to do research beforehand. And so I started writing, but along the way, once again, I had research that I had to do. I made her a real estate agent. I don't know a lot about real estate agents, but there were questions that I had. Was this possible? Could she do this? Is this legal? What would happen if? Those kinds of questions. And so once again, I do my little bit of research along the way. And then if I need to, toward the end, then I can do a little bit more. And then everything else keeps changing because my life keeps changing. So I love to go away. I like to get out of here. I do my best writing not at home. And I do my best writing not only not at home, but not going home for a while. So, put me at a writer's retreat where I'm gone for a week or 2 and I will get so much done. And at home, I don't know, at home, the laundry needs to be folded and, I forgot to get that thing out of the freezer and all of those other things that come up. So for the first books, I was able to just get away. Well, then, as you know, my husband got sick, so he had brain cancer. And during that 2.5 years, I really couldn't go anywhere. I mean, I would go little short jaunts, but definitely not a week or 2 away. And I had to learn to write in little short periods of time here and there, like wherever I could fit it in. And I was really afraid because Peg Unhinged was written, at least the first third of it was written in little periods of time. And then I didn't write for several months because we got to the end of his life and this was not a time for writing. And then once he passed, I was not writing. And then I had to start writing again. And I actually did go away to a retreat, but I had to kind of figure out where was Peg, and like, do I even feel her anymore, and had to find her again in order to write that. So my process is very much like, get me out of my house. And when I know I'm going, my brain starts spinning, and I'll realize that I want to write, and I won't let myself until I get to where I'm going. So for like 2 or 3 days before I go, I can feel myself going, oh, I have this idea. And it's like, gotta wait until you get to your writing spot. So by the time I get there, I can hardly get into my room, and I'm, you know.
Oh, I love that.
It's
That's
fascinating.
so cool.
I'm the exact opposite, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you
I
an
go-
everyday writer?
No, I go away from the house, and it's like any little thing can throw me off. Like if I went to visit a friend over the holidays, brought all my writing stuff with me, didn't do a thing.
Right.
So, but I
Being
get
being at a friend's house is different.
yeah.
Because
No,
friends,
I was house sitting though.
okay.
But I was in my own space. It was I
Oh,
just
no. If
no.
I
If
were,
I'm not in my own it's weird.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
so I can edit in my own space.
Oh,
Mhm.
that's
So like
interesting.
here in my office, I've got the basic of the story out, and now
Yeah.
I'm going back through, and my editing to me is a very different process than my writing. When I write, I just call it word vomit, and it just
Yeah.
like falls out of my mouth, and I just type it up as fast as I can get it onto, onto the computer, and then it's done, and it's ugly, but it's done, and the main story is out, and now I can go back and start doing fixing. And I can do that in my office, partially because I often edit in short little increments. Like I can only work on it for about an hour, and then it's like, oh, I got to do something else. Like I don't like the editing process. I mean, I love it because I love what happens after it's edited. And I know it needs it, but I don't find it as enjoyable as the get the whole story out of my body part. And once that's done, then the rest of it's kind of like, okay, this has to be done.
That's really, really interesting. And it's interesting, for me who's not a novelist, but living with a novelist. It's funny to see the parallels and the differences.
Yeah.
And the parallel
opposites.
well, it's complete opposites in some ways, but there's also that similarity of, the thing that helps you both with your writing is that distraction-free environment. For you, it's when you go away. For you, it's being in your space. And I know, I primarily live in New York, but I'm back here, for work or in between projects every now and again. And, when I'm here, I'm like, I pull you out of your work all the time, not even meaning to, but just by
like,
being
you're
here.
such a bad influence.
Yeah.
Well, just so it's funny, when I would work in my office when my husband was still alive, and I would tell him, I'm going to be working in my office today, and I need you to leave me alone. And he'd say, sure, no problem. And I would be, just like really focused. And all of a sudden I would feel his presence over my shoulder. And I would turn to look at him, and he was very quiet, very polite. And he would say, when you have time, I was wondering if you could spend 10 minutes in the garage with me. I need some help with whatever. And I would say, sure, let's go do it. And he'd say, oh, you have time now? And I was like, well, I do now.
I do now. You've
Yes.
ruined the flow
And
already.
he never, I don't think he ever really comprehended that now the flow is gone. I might as well go do laundry and anything else, because until it's back.
See?
Yeah.
Not just me. It's not just me.
That is my response. And I think that's probably why working at home works for you most of the time, because you are here alone, that's super interesting. I want to ask you about, historical character driven fiction, because there's something really interesting there. As you've already touched on, everything comes from the characters, and the characters come first, which was one of the first things that I wanted to ask you about. But how much does that environment and location and time period impact the story? I know that you said that you get the character first, but once you sort of put them into that world, does that world then have an impact on how that character develops over the course of writing?
Oh, it has to, because, a woman in the 1890s had certain restrictions. There were certain things that could and couldn't be done. There are certain things that can and can't be said. It isn't that the feelings are different, but it's how are they expressed? What can she do about them? What would be considered, You know, like if she's going to do something way outside the norm, then the response of everyone else has to be way outside the norm. They have to look at her and say, like, what are you doing? Right? Because you can't have her go and just, I don't know, like decide she's going to college, because that wasn't something that happened, or it happened rarely. And so if she was going to make one of these huge choices, then you have to make sure that everyone around her is saying things like scandalous, right? Because you have to make sure that it fits the time period. And so I'm sure it changes the character. You know, you have this character idea, and then you plop her into a space, and now she grows there. And so if you took, you know, I have a character who was a granny woman. So she's in the mountains of North Carolina in the 1890s. Well, if I had put her as a nurse in the 1960s, well, she's going to be a different woman. She can't help but be different. You know, anybody is different. How you live, what you think, what people around you expect, all of those things really change. And so you kind of have to get into, although I'm very character driven, you do have to get into the time period in your mind so that you understand what is possible, what is not possible. And if you're going to do something a little outside the box, which is fine, you just have to make sure that it's still feasible and that everyone responds correctly to the fact that she's outside the box.
Yeah, that it's treated with the weight that it needs in that time period.
Right, right. Which would be very different than today. I mean, you know, a woman today says, oh, I'm going to go, you know, to school and become a healer. And you're like, okay, have at it. Right. Not a big, I mean, nobody even blinks twice, but you can't say that in 1890s.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's super, super interesting. And I guess that leads me to wondering, you know, what I know that you said characters sort of they come to you and that's where they, you know, and then you place them in the time period that's best for them. What does a character need when they come to you for them to be interesting and exciting enough for you to want to write a whole story about them? Because that's a big commitment. You know, I mean, as a you know, as a screenwriter for film, I have characters and thoughts and little storylines that come all the time, and a lot of them don't make it past that first thought, because I'm like, I can't make a whole movie about this person.
So usually for me, it's a character that won't go away. So I often have characters. I have things that jump in and out of my mind so often that if people were in my mind, they would probably be a little frightened. I mean, there's just a lot of storytelling, a lot of things that go on. And for me, it's a character that just keeps coming back, that just keeps whispering in my ear, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here. Hey, I've got this idea. Hey, there's this little story you need to think about. And before long, you're like, okay, this has got to be done. Sometimes it's also that something was very compelling when the character kind of was born in my head. For instance, my grandfather told me a story when I was a teenager, and that story never left me. And then that story popped into my mind again, and the character was born immediately. And I knew I needed to do that. My grandfather were of German descent. He fought in World War II. He fought in Germany. He rarely talked about the war. But one time he said to me, I always wondered if the person on the other side of my gun was a cousin. Okay, so that stuck with me for years. And we're talking 40 years later, that came to my mind. Immediately, there was a character, because I thought, wouldn't it have been even harder if Grandpa, as a German American, had been like a first generation German American? And when I thought that, bam, the character was born. Jacob was born in my head, and I knew I had to write that story.
Oh, wow.
So it's either a character that won't leave me alone, or a character that was born in such a way that it was like, hey, I'm here and I can tell that story that you just had that idea over, and it feels too compelling to just let it go.
Yeah, it's the difference. It's either the duration, or it's just the power of that initial thought. That is fascinating.
So your process really begins with the character. That's where you're starting. So in terms of the next step, or in terms of your overall process of creating this world that you then capture and offer to your readers, is there a specific sort of linear, because you and I have talked that we're both kind of pantsters. We don't
Right.
flesh out outlines and figure
Right.
out whatever, this is my plot point for this and that. We don't do that. We just sort of write.
I've tried to do that. My
I know.
characters refuse to participate. So
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, is there sort of some sort of methodology that you just sort of naturally implement or follow? And also, is there something that you usually do that if you don't do, it messes everything up, and then you end up having to go back and just redo it that way?
My methodology is a little scary in terms of, I think that most authors, not most, a lot of authors though, I think would look at it and say, I can't believe that she can write if that's how she does things. Because I do not write every day. I do what I call word vomit. I do what I call binge writing, where maybe I don't write for 4, 5, 6, 7 days, maybe 15 days. And then I sit down and I write for 4 days and I hardly eat, because for 12 hours a day, I'm just going to town. And then I have nothing to say and I don't for a week or two. And then I sit down and do it again. I wouldn't tell someone to do it my way, but it's what happens for me. I think the process is, I get the idea, I get that character, and then I let the character cook in my head for a while. I do not sit down and start writing on day one. I don't get a character and say, oh, I'm writing the story. I have this character and I recognize that this character is going to be the character. And I kind of give the character room in my head to explore things, try out little scenarios, just see where things go. And eventually something will come to me and I'll think, that's how the story's going to start. That would be a good start. And so I write that, and I write that until there isn't anything left for me to say. I've written until I have no words. And then I'll start getting another idea. That character will start doing its thing again in my head. And then I'll think, ooh, that would be the next piece. And when that comes to me, I sit down and do it again. That could be the next day, and it could be 2 weeks from now. And I do not recommend this process, but it's if I try to force it, I write terribly. I actually, in Peg Unhinged, I got to a point, Bruce was sick. I was desperate. I was trying to get words, and that's what I was focused on. I wanted a certain number of words per week, and I got them. And then I reread them, and they were so bad that I had lost Peg's voice entirely. There was no way to get it back. Like, I was now at a point in the book where the Peg that I had started with wouldn't even be doing these things. It made no sense. I had to throw out 40,000 words.
Oh, wow.
That's painful.
Yeah.
But what a lesson you learned.
Yes. And so when you say, like, for me, if I try to force it when I'm not ready, that's the thing I do wrong. Don't force it. Don't write an outline. My characters stand along the wall, tap their feet, and say, you let us know when you're done with that stupid experiment, and then we'll start talking to you again. I just need to go with the flow. And then I think the other thing that I can do is I get a little worried. So I usually write about 80 to 82,000 words is what a novel is for what I'm doing. And I'm often at 55, 60,000 words and have no idea how the book is ending. And I begin to panic. And then I start forcing again, because it's this panic. Oh my gosh, and it's like, if I'll just remain calm, I always get to this point, and I usually hate the book at that point too. I'm at like 60,000 words. I hate everything I've written. I hate the book. I hate the characters. It's never going anywhere. This is stupid. I should just throw it all out. I hate the whole thing. And if I'll usually pull back, spend a day doing, like, out in nature, just out away, not thinking about the book, and all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, oh ho ho ho, and I'll start that, and then the whole end opens up. I know exactly where I'm going. And then I have to be careful not to rush it because I'm so excited that I just try to rush to the end because I now finally know what it is.
Right. Oh, there's so much in there
there's so much in
that I
there.
love.
It's like, you know what I love about this, though, the most thing that I love about it, you know, when you're in kindergarten, you have a really long, hard word.
Mhm.
What is the advice that you're told?
Chunk it out, sound it out.
Yeah.
Chunk it out. And that's, you've got this big book, this 85,000 word book. And she's chunking it out. I love this.
It's so cool. You know, I'm finding so many parallels, funny enough, with your writing and my work in film. Both in when I write my screenplays, I'm also very much like a word vomit. I can go like a week and I have nothing to say, and then it's boom, I've got the entire thing done for the short film in one night. Or and then the same with getting near the end and being like, oh, this is like, I don't know. I had that in the editing process for my first short. I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is going to be a mess. I was like, why did I do this? I've committed so much time. But there's something that you said that really, really stuck out to me. And you mentioned it a couple times about your characters not cooperating and you know, personifying those characters. And that's really, really interesting to me, seeing them as you know, they are people in your story, but seeing them as people. Which leads me to wondering, are there ever times where you write something, or maybe you reread something that you've written, and you have a moment where you go, oh, that's what that character meant in that moment? Maybe you've written, or you're rereading something you've written that you didn't even realize fully the weight of it.
I have added things in like early on where all of a sudden I use that later, and it becomes very important. And I had no understanding of why I added it. For instance, in An Enemy Like Me, he has the little boy has a dream. Well, then these dreams become very important a little later in the book. But when he had this first dream, I don't even know why I wrote it, except it was in my head. So I wrote it. I think my character already knew that they were going to use the dreams. I didn't know it yet. And I know people who aren't authors, who don't write, they think that I'm nuts, like maybe I need medication. And potentially I do. I'm not saying I don't, but not for that reason. There's that piece, that creative piece. It isn't in the same space with my logical brain. My logical brain, I write lists. Everything I do is very listed out. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm doing an hour from now. I know what I'm doing 2 hours from now, but I can't write that way. And I think sometimes that creative part only lets little pieces out at a time for me. And I get those down on paper, and then it's like, look what we're going to do with this. You know, and I almost feel like my creative me isn't me. It's a whole nother, it's like another unit that just happens to live in my body and every now and then lets me in.
That's really, really cool. And I always tell people this, who are outside of a creative field. It's like there is some unquantifiable magic in and I can only call it magic, you know, whether it's, you know, live performance or it's writing or it's whatever, that just it's you can't explain how it happens. Things just magically, it's like seeing that actor have a really amazing scene and you see like 10 years of memories in like one look that they give. And it's like it's all there.
It's like, how did you do that? And I have been like, I've got something to write and I'm just, you know, on the keyboard, just typing out as fast as I can go. Well, while I'm doing that, you know, it's coming up and I'm reading it but I'm typing something else and I'm reading this. And I have actually done things like gone, oh, as though I didn't know that I just typed it.
I actually love that. I was going to ask about that. I'm going to ask you if there's ever been a time where your story started out and you were like, this is what I'm writing about. And then your characters ended up morphing or evolving, surprising you in some way. And you ended up being, oh, no, actually, this is what I wrote about.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. All the time. I had a character. Now it's a manuscript that I got about 2/3 of the way through and I haven't gone back to. I probably need to try it again. But I had a character who was supposed to be a one chapter character. Like they were just there for a purpose. I wasn't even going to name them. And then they were going to be gone. And they took over and became a main character, and everything changed. I had one idea, and this character said, by the way, that idea isn't any good, but the one that I have is better. And, you know, and off we went. And it's really, like I said, people who haven't experienced it, it sounds nuts. I know it sounds nuts. It feels nuts. There's nothing that feels nuttier than knowing that you just typed something onto a document, read the document, and thought to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, when you just wrote it.
I love that you've just verbalized that, because it makes me feel like maybe I'm not crazy, because I've had the exact same.
Yeah, I mean,
experience.
it's if you've not experienced it, it does sound completely nutty, but I just feel like the creativity, that piece of me, I think kind of gets buried underneath life and my lists and all of the other things. And when I can tap into it, when I find the space to kind of let it out, it just surprises me what is in there, because I'm not consciously thinking, now I'm going to write, which is why I don't think I can do an outline, because my outlines are actually, if you told me to outline a book, they're boring. I just don't have that. If I'm not tapping into that creative piece, I don't know. I have a bunch of list makers doing a bunch of boring things. It's just not, I don't know.
So have you ever had a time where, like, you're looking at your story, or you're thinking about your story, and your brain and your gut contradict each other?
Oh, all the time. I always go with my gut.
You always go with your gut.
I shouldn't say I always, but when I don't, I regret it and end up having to go back and go with my gut.
Okay.
My brain is far too logical, requires things to be a certain way, needs characters not to make stupid mistakes, all of the things that need to happen to make this a journey. My brain is going, we already know better than that. We're not doing that. You know, and so, yeah, if my brain and my gut are in combat, I go with my gut. In Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, there's a scene, I can't tell you about it because it would ruin a portion of the book, but there's a scene, and it's a tough one, and I didn't want to write it. I didn't want it to happen. I knew it needed to happen, but I didn't want it to happen. And so my gut is saying, write the scene, and my brain is saying, no. And for 6 weeks, I wrote nothing. And I, for 6 weeks, tried to come up with different scenarios that would fix this problem and move me forward without doing the thing I didn't want to do. And I finally gave in, wrote the scene. I told myself, you can write it, you don't have to use it. Just write it. I wrote the scene. It was exhausting because it was a tough scene. I went to bed. I woke up in the morning and I knew how the rest of the story was going to go.
Mm.
And I feel like my characters stood there and said, you could be 6 weeks ahead if you'd listened to us in the first place. I mean,
your characters are so judgy.
They are. They really are. They tap their feet. They sigh.
I like any minute now, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I have characters, I've had characters pretty much tell me, I would never do that. I refuse to participate in this scene if you're going to have me do that, because this is not who I am.
I love how alive your characters come for you. That's really amazing.
I think that's why I feel like I'm a character-driven author, is because they really are driven by characters. These characters become people. They live in my head. And I, like I said, again, it makes me sound crazy, but they become fully developed. I could tell you on any given day what they're going to have for breakfast that morning. I mean, I just feel that connected to them. But once I'm done writing and I've gotten their story out, they kind of fade away. It's not like they're still living there. I mean, I can pull them back up. It's not like, oh, Maggie, let's bring you in. But she isn't living in my head. But while I'm writing the novel, she's living in my head.
Wow. That's there's a really interesting little parallel
with your iceberg thing.
Well, with your, I was going to say with my iceberg, but also with acting, where when you
Right.
spend
Well,
so
that's
much
what I was
time with a
talking about.
character, yeah.
So he has this thing where he's acting, right? And his thing is like, you need to know the entire iceberg. The audience only sees that top
This
little
little piece, right?
yeah,
but you know what they have for breakfast, where they went to school, how they put on their shirt, whatever it is.
and even though
Whether they put on sock shoe, or sock shoe, like, you know, the whole
exactly.
thing, right?
And even though the audience never sees that, because you know that, the audience feels it, like just what we were saying with the, you know, with the stuff that, you know, you can just feel from the audience. That's super interesting.
Yes, and I
Mhm.
mean, yes, and I think Terry's the first author who's ever had that.
Who's expressed that on the show for sure.
That.
Yeah.
I doubt I'm the only one, though. I suspect there are a lot of authors that feel this, that just either are embarrassed to say it out loud because, you know, quite frankly, I've told you how many times where I mean, I do, but it's definitely, I have characters that live in my head and I feel like they're born. Like 1 minute there's not a character and then all of a sudden, bam. You know, I was doing research. So for Daughters of Green Mountain Gap, this is a story about a healer, 1890s. She's called a granny woman. They do roots and herbs and what I like to say is a little bit of mountain magic, you know, just like stuff you can't quite explain. It all came about because I had a wart. And I had this wart and I had gone to the doctor for something else and just said, hey, can we burn this off? And my doctor was like, oh no, it's on your hand. We'll have to send you to a specialist. So I went to CVS and just got a little patch and, you know, off the wart came. And I mentioned this to my brother just about being, you know, irritated with doctors nowadays that they don't do anything anymore. And he said, why didn't you get someone to talk it off? Well, I've never heard of such a thing, talking off a wart. And I am a gullible person, very gullible in my family. And everyone will tell me stories. I fall for them. And then I have to hear about it for Christmas after Christmas after Christmas. Remember that time when we told Teri, right? So I did not fall for it. And I just, and we got off the phone. But now I'm too curious to let that go. So I looked it up. And there are people who will talk to warts and they fall off within a week. Okay.
Like
so
actual documented, legitimate
people. My brother said he knows one. So as I'm doing this research, like looking and finding this, the next thing you know, I find out there are people who can blow in your mouth if you have thrush and the thrush will disappear. There are people who can talk to babies who are breech and get them to flip just by the words and the intonations and things that they use. And then the next thing you know, I am in the mountains of North Carolina, in Appalachian Mountains with granny women, and Maggie was literally born in my head. And poof, she's there. And she's like, I have a story to tell. And it's like, oh, you sure do. Wow. You know, so yeah, my characters are very, I don't come up with an idea. I come up with a character who has an idea, who tells me their idea, and then I write it down.
Well, that's really, really interesting. And it leads me to a question, it is all character-driven stories. How do you go about, squaring that away with a book like, 12 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, which is 10. Did I say 12?
Yes, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll come up with 2 more just for you.
Come up with 2 more. Just add it. A new edition. But
because that's a very different thing.
That is a different thing. That's your story of you guys.
You're the character.
You're the characters.
But I'm the character, and I also live in my head. And so for me, this story, it was a little different writing it. But I kept a blog the entire way across the United States. So my husband and I rode on a tandem bicycle from the coast of Oregon to Washington, D.C. So that's 3,102 miles. And I wrote a blog every single day. And it said everything. It told how I felt that day. It told any big stories that happened. It told how hot it was, how many flat tires we had. It had everything, to the point that most people wouldn't want to read it. I mean, it was very, very much for me. But as I came home and I'm trying to square in my mind that I made this unbelievable journey because I am not an athlete. And for me, this was an amazingly huge out of the box experience. I couldn't really believe I had done it. It's like, yes, I wrote every day. I know I did, but how? How did I get from there to here? It just didn't make sense. So I started reading my blog just to try to get a feel. And it was like, oh, would you look at that? Look at that thing I learned. Wow, isn't that cool? So I wrote it down. And then, oh, look at that thing I learned. And I wrote it down. And then I had the idea this would make a good book. So now I just need to go back and find those stories, those things that I've lived, that I've already kind of written down in my blog, maybe not fully, but enough to remind me of the story. And which of these stories best explains this thing that I learned and why. And that's how I did that one. So it was a little different, but I still feel like it's character driven because it's very much about me.
I love that. That is really, really, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Do you feel like that? I mean, that journey is a life-changing event. It's a life-changing, it really is transformational. And do you think that experience helped you as a writer, as a creative? And if so, how?
So absolutely. Prior to writing, I wasn't a writer. I mean, I had written a few manuscripts, but I had let no one see them. I didn't believe in myself. I had zero confidence in anything that I had written. I couldn't imagine that my writing would ever go anywhere or be anything. And at the end of the ride, so here we've been 3,100, probably 3,100 miles at this point. We have 2 miles left to go. And I thought, I just rode across the United States on a tandem bicycle. I can do anything. It's not a matter of can I do it, but what do I want? And I thought, I want to be an author. And I thought, well, then go do it. And it was because of the ride that I had the guts to say, I'm just going to put myself out there and I'm going to do this. I am going to do it. 14 months after we came home, my first book came out.
Wow. That's really cool. And I've just got to say, I'm really enjoying these. There's a lot of parallels here between the two of you, because I know that you'd written stuff as well, but never wanted to put it out. And then it's obviously very different from riding across the country, but you ran for office, and after that ended, you were like, I can do anything.
Yeah,
I can, and that's when you put out your book.
I think it's this going outside of your comfort zone. Like we all live in little boxes.
Like way outside your comfort zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all live in boxes. And it's because life is easier that way. You know what's going to happen. You get up in the morning, you kind of know how the flow of the day and off you go. But you really don't learn much when you're stuck inside your little box. And when either you're forced outside of it or you choose to go outside of it is when you learn. It's when you grow. It's when you can become. And for me, when we decided, I knew I wanted to do something big. I had been in a 14-year emotionally abusive relationship and had gotten out of it, but now I'm a mess of a person. And I thought I needed to prove to the world that I still had value. So I had been looking for something big and bold to do. Turns out the world did not think anything bad about me, but I thought the world was thinking. And we decided, or Bruce, I met Bruce, and he said that he wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle. And I thought, well, that's big and bold, right? And so I said, well, is this something you're going to talk about forever, or are you going to actually do it? He said, no, I want to do it. I said, count me in. Well, the crazy thing is I hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years.
Oh my goodness.
So this was huge, well outside of my comfort zone. And I think when you can force yourself to do something really big, like run for office or, whatever the big thing is, or some people are kind of forced into doing something outside their comfort zone. They didn't want to, but they find themselves in that position. But when they do and they succeed at it, then you kind of come away from it saying, I didn't do anything. I mean, really, like if I can ride across the United States on a tandem bicycle, me, non-athletic Teri, who hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years, then I can actually do anything. So let's figure out what that anything is.
Yeah.
And I've had people say to me, well, you could run a marathon. And it's like, yes, I could. Zero desire to, so I won't. But, I know I could. You're right. If I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not just the riding, it's not just you rode a bicycle, but you camped, you were in all kinds of weather. You had to deal with, I'm guessing, injuries, saddle soreness. I mean, it's everything that goes along with that, living in close quarters with another human being day in, day out, not a break for a minute. That's a hard thing to do with anybody. That's, so it's everything that goes along with that experience.
And then all of my insecurities that I brought along for the first part of the ride and shed them along the way. But I mean, there in the beginning, I was an emotional wreck. I mean, I was probably the worst person in the world for Bruce to pick to go on this adventure with him, because I was mentally not where I needed to be, but I couldn't get where I needed to be without doing something big and bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes. So. Absolutely.
So, there's something else that you do. I didn't even mention it in the beginning because there was just so much else. But you also do book events. You do book signings, book readings. You have all kinds of events that you do. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that and how that impacts your process, that interaction that you have with your readers, because I know that you shared a little bit about that when you spoke to our group a couple years back, but you want to talk a little bit about how that interaction influences you.
I first of all love talking with a reader. There is nothing better, and even if they didn't agree with something that I wrote or have a problem with it, I want to hear, like, what is that, so that I have a better understanding. I don't know what it is. I think writing is so solitary. I can't write with someone hanging over my shoulder. I can write in a crowded space, but only because I'm now ignoring everybody in that crowded space. They have nothing to do with it. In fact, the louder it is, the easier it is for me to tune everybody out, and then I can just focus on what I'm doing. So I think for me, it's a chance to, I don't know, test the waters. Like, how is the book doing? Not with a reviewer, not with someone who decides on awards. Those are all wonderful things, but those aren't readers. They have a job to do, and they're doing their job. I want to know about, Julie down the road, who picks up a book because she wants to and reads it. What does she think? And why? What about it did you like? What didn't you like? Because I want to know. I am writing for myself, but I'm also writing for whoever's going to pick it up. And sometimes I get some really good insights into things that it's like, oh, I could do more with that character. Or I've had so many people tell me that I need to do like a series. So like, I want to know what happens to Josephine, Josie May at the end. And it's like, yeah, make it up in your own head. I'm kind of done with her, but they want me, they want me to go on with it. Like, oh, there's so much more that could be said here. And so I think it's just interesting to hear other people's takes on your work. It's also really gratifying because, once again, it's solitary. So I sit and read something and I think to myself, that's pretty good. I think I like that. And that's what I get.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's that balance though between leave them wanting more and
yes,
giving them more.
Right. But when you go to a book club and you have somebody say, oh, there is this one sentence. Can I read it out loud? I want to tell you this one sentence that just really stood out to me. And she's reading it and you're thinking to yourself, I wrote that. Wow, that's pretty cool. I don't know that it changes my process as much as it gives me like the food that I need to believe in myself that, yes, I am touching the audience. I am hitting on those places that I want to hit. I can do this. My fear when I finish a book every time is, what if I don't have any more in me? What if that's the last one? Then what? And after my first book, I was terrified. My first book came out, and my first thought was, what if I'm a one-hit wonder and that's it?
Oh.
What if there's nothing else? And so when I finished the second book, I was terrified. I handed it to my editor, and I thought, oh, she's going to tear it apart and hate it. She's going to tell me that you are not really an author. You need to go find a different day job, like go do something else. And so, yeah, it's a little bit terrifying to think that what if it just dries up? Because I don't know where it comes from. So, like, I've learned things I do to tap into it, but I don't know if it's there until it comes out and shows itself. It's not like I go, oh, it's down in there and I can, I feel it. I don't.
Yeah, but I feel like from what you've said, your process is that it's not necessarily in there, except for the thing from your dad, which actually wasn't originally in you.
Grandfather.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, grandfather.
Yeah.
But it's more you see things or hear things. Your brother makes the comment about blowing, and you see things in the world or you hear things and it triggers something. So yeah, I don't think it's a problem that you don't necessarily have it in you now, because it's going to come to you because you get out there and you do stuff and you're going to be experiencing.
But I also think building on the process, I think that your process is also, obviously we've talked about like how the characters drive, but it's the respect for the characters and it's almost like they're it's an honoring, and it's almost like a even a relationship even closer than family, because like you said, they're cohabitating your brain.
Right.
And it's that deep interpersonal relationship with these characters and listening to them, and I think that really, really drives your process.
Yeah it definitely, I mean, when my characters aren't speaking, I'm not writing.
Yeah.
I can't get anything down. And I think maybe that's the reason why editing is hard for me, is often my characters are hanging around, but they're really not saying much to me. They're kind of like, okay, now you're on your own. We told you the story. Now it's up to you to, mess around with those words and make them the way that you need to make them so that people will want to read our words. But we've done our part. And it's not that they disappear completely, because sometimes I'll have to like write a whole new scene and, oh, they're there for that. But when I'm dinking around with words, trying to figure out, well, what's the best word for this? Yeah, they're off, I don't know, playing cards somewhere, doing something else, right? They're not hanging with me at the moment. They're like, yeah, she's busy doing her thing.
They're sitting. There's a stage play that came out about a year ago that's about the actors in the making of Jaws. And how they just sat in the boat waiting for shots to go up and just played cards together.
Yeah.
And that's my image of them. You're doing all this stuff outside and they're just sitting in the cabin playing cards together.
Yeah, they're just hanging, waiting.
They're like, you just let me know when it's time for us to just call action and we'll be ready. But
right. If you have something that you need us for, we'll be there to help out. But when you're wordsmithing right now, we're going to leave you to that, because we really don't care which word you use,
Well, that's super interesting, and it leads me. I want to pull back a little bit to talking about audience and your interaction with audiences. When you do those those events and things like that. Has there ever been a time where audience, like one of your readers, has come up to you and they've gleaned something from your book that like you had no intention of, or you never even thought of?
Yeah, and I can't think of a time, but it has happened several times where they'll say, when I read such and so, I was thinking, did you mean this? And I'm listening to them and it's like, no, I didn't, but that's pretty cool. Which has led me to believe that all of those English teachers that make you say, what was the author thinking when they made the curtains blue? And you have to come up with the author. I tell you what the author was thinking. I need to make the curtains some color. Oh, my curtains are blue curtains. I mean,
Exactly.
right? Like sometimes you really are trying to get a point across. You really are. And sometimes you're just making the curtains blue.
Yeah.
Like, and someone else will get something from it because of their life experiences, where they are, what they needed from the book, how they related to the character, all of those things. And now those blue curtains mean something to them when they were just blue.
Yeah. And there's something that on a parallel line, you know, having like the English teachers. I remember I used to have, I took a class in college once where we were talking about, you know, like classic literature.
Yeah.
And we were going through, I think it was Hamlet, or it was some Shakespeare, and someone had an interpretation of the text, and the professor went, "No, that's not what it means." And I was like, "Well, how do you know?" I was like, "What do you mean that's?"
Were you in the room?
I was like,
Yeah,
"What do you mean there can't be more than one interpretation?"
Did you
of
and,
that?
and Shakespeare sit down and have a little chat?
I had
Like,
a teacher
Exactly.
like that. I had an
Yeah.
English teacher like that.
And
Exactly.
so for me now as an author, when I hear those kinds of questions or those kinds of statements, I laugh a little in my head, because maybe they did have a reason for making it that way. Or maybe their editor said, you do not have enough description about this room and we need more. And they said, okay, you know,
Blue curtain, sure.
blue curtains, yellow wall. The floor felt cold. Okay, good. All that stuff. You know what I mean? Like that could be all it was, or it could be, but you don't know. And then as a reader, you take each of those things, and some of them become important to you and some of them don't. And some of the things that are important to me maybe don't reach you. Maybe when you read it, it didn't touch you that way, the way it touched me. And that's okay too. I think that's the wonderful thing about reading. And that's why I love doing book clubs, is because people have different ideas about the book, different ideas about the characters, which character they love, which character they didn't, which character they relate most to, the one they understand the least. You know, characters that they never could come to like. And that's all different for everybody.
I
It's
love
so
that.
fascinating listening, because I got to tell you, you and I really are very parallel in a lot of ways, and yet completely opposite in some ways, right? Like for me, when I'm writing, I visualize, like I can see the room. We had a scene this the other day. Remember, when I was asking you, what do you think? I feel like, is it enough? And you were like, I don't really see that. And I had to describe it more, but I see the locations when I'm writing.
And I do not.
The characters, I'm like, okay. You know, I have to think about that. It's like, oh, I have to. So I write something out. I write my little, you know, first draft, which is really just an extended out. And then I was like, okay, I got to come up with dialogue. I just got to come up with dialogue here, because I have to, you know, express the character. And it's just so funny that you're the exact opposite.
Right. For me, so in Sunflowers Beneath the Snow, my first book, I get it to the editor. It's set in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And she comes back to me, and she's got lots. I mean, this is my first, so you can only imagine lots of edits that needed to go on. But one of her big comments was, other than the fact that you said it was in Ukraine, this could be anywhere.
Forgot to describe it.
And I said, well, I said it was in Ukraine. What more do you need?
Yes.
Like, it's about the characters, lady. And I had to go back and like really think about, what is this person seeing? What, you know, and add some things. By the time I wrote my third novel, I already knew that this was a problem of mine. And so as I was writing, I would, even if I couldn't do it right then, I would write something and then I highlight it in yellow so I can find it later. And it will say, need more here. And I know that means scenery. Like, right. I need to describe, like, I'm not in, that's not where I am right now. I'm in the middle of dialogue. I've got things going on, but I'm going to need more here. And I go ahead and just make a note to myself so that I can go back and find that and then do better before I hand it to my editor.
Which is so funny, because isn't your need more here kind of usually more character stuff?
I need dialogue. I need something. I need internal, like what's going on in the character's head.
What are they thinking? Yeah.
Because I've described the forest. I've described the forest, the birds, the owl, the leaf litter.
See, and I've got a
What are they
character
doing?
who's
I
I've
don't
got a
know. They're
character
talking.
who's doing and thinking, and you don't know if they're inside, if they're outside,
Yeah.
you know, nothing.
It's really
It sounds like you two need to write a book together. Together, you'll have a New York Times bestseller. That
I
sounds
tell
great.
you, I tell
I
you.
actually want to switch gears just a
Yeah.
little bit, because you do straddle the worlds between being a writer and being a podcaster.
Yeah.
And you've got, you know, your podcast that you do by yourself, and you have your podcast that you co-host. You focus on authors. And I'm wondering, how do the two processes interrelate? Do they inform each other? Is there some sort of symbiosis there? I mean, how do those two worlds relate, given that they're both very author focused?
So for me, when I first started doing the podcast, I did it for completely selfish reasons. I needed a presence. I needed to be out in the world. To me, it was a good way to kind of market myself, because there I am. You look me up, you can find me everywhere now. I've been podcasting for 2 years, and that means I'm out there. That was my initial thought. Then I also knew it would be a good way to grow my author community, because when I got started writing, I made a decision I was going to be an author, and I put a book out, and I didn't even know any other authors. I had not done it the way most people do, where they start out in groups and no, I wasn't a member of anything. I wasn't a member of the North Carolina group. I was a member of nothing. And I realized this wasn't good, that I needed a community. And so it was a way to build a community. And then third, it feeds my reading habit, because people give me their digital copies so that I can read the book before I have them on the show. And that means that I get to read. And so the 87 books that I've read so far this year, I haven't had to purchase.
Wow.
Which I'm okay with.
87 books.
Yeah, 87 books. So yeah, but I do get to talk with other authors, and I hear about their processes and things that work and don't work for them. And I do play around sometimes with some of those things that I learn. Or reading one of their books, I'll think, wow, I like the way they did this. This is something to keep in mind. Or maybe I'll think, this was a little flat. Why? Why am I feeling that way? That's something I can avoid. I need to make sure that when I'm writing my character, I don't do that thing, whatever that thing is that I see when I'm reading. So I think being a podcaster, that's just because I love to talk. And so it's great to get out and talk with the authors, but doing the reading is probably the part that really influences how I write, because I'm reading so many books of so many genres, and you can see how people do different things and what works and what doesn't. You know, I like to go along when I'm reading, and anytime that I feel like I've been jolted out of a book for whatever reason, I make note of that. Not to say anything to the author, because, you know, we all have those places and things and whatnot, but for my own personal, be careful what you're doing here, because this jolted me right out of a book.
Well, that's super interesting. So do you think, do you find that you learn more from things that work, or do you find that you learn more from things that don't work?
I think it's pretty equal. I think it's pretty equal. You know, when I see something that's really working, it's a little harder sometimes to figure out what it is. You know it's working. Wow, this is really working. And then you have to stop and think, why? And then you have to do a lot more analyzing. Things that aren't working, to me, are a little more obvious. It's like stubbing your toe, and you can look down and see you slammed it into the furniture, and you know exactly what happened. But when you're feeling good, well, what is it? Is it because I got good sleep, or because I ate well today, or because, you know, it's sunny out? I don't know. You have to kind of do a lot more digging. So it's easier when you read something that isn't good to figure out that's not good. It's a little harder to figure out what you're going to do to make your book as good as someone else. But it's often things like, I don't know, just the way they put their words together, and the emotion that came out. I'm really big on character and emotion. And if you can get a character and emotion down right, I want to know what you've done to get it.
Dang. And when I'm reading, I am all about the world building.
See, and I'm the person
I-
that skips all of that. Like I'm going, where's the character? There's the character.
That's so funny. Yeah, I think that's why I like Tolkien and Diana Gabaldon, and they just like create these rich worlds.
And I'm
That the
thinking,
characters are almost secondary in a
and
way.
I keep thinking, like, when are we getting to the story?
I love
Like,
it.
like
I love
great.
this.
We've had 17 pages now of what the inside of this room looks like, and I want to know who's in it. Who's in the room?
Yeah,
And
that's
so, yeah,
funny.
it's
That's
but isn't it lovely that there are different kinds of readers and different kinds of writers?
there are
Because
there are, and
isn't
it is,
there isn't
yeah.
one way to write a book. There isn't
There's not.
one.
There's
There's not the best book.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
When you are reading versus when you are speaking with an author, which one do you think informs your own process and your own writing better? And how do you handle it when you've read an author's book and you're like, not fabulous, and you still have to interview them?
So I don't have to interview them. Because when someone gets on my waiting list, it is with the caveat that I will read your book and I will let you know if I believe that it is a good fit for my audience. And so if I get to a point in a book where I realize I just can't, I just let the author know that I don't believe it's a good fit for my audience.
Oh,
Because-
that's nice of you, rather than this book really stinks. So
Well, because does the book really stink, or is it just not the right book for me?
clearly it's not character driven and it has too
Right.
much descriptor.
Right, right. Clearly.
I'll never be on her show.
No, that's probably not true. You probably do a better job than you think. But I have particularly, like, I found out, I didn't realize that there's like many levels of fantasy, and there's what they call the high fantasy. I can't read high fantasy. And I can't read it because they spend, I don't know what, there's like 6 books in the series, and the first 3 books are building the world, and you haven't even met any characters yet. I can't stand that. Right? Like, I don't care. I do not care. Tell me what the character is doing and then why we need to know something about the world, and I'm fine with it. But do not build this world. You know, it's like, oh, we have to get through the first book. No, I do not.
No.
I cannot. And so I tend to, like, in the fantasy genre, I've noticed what I like is young adult fantasy. And the reason I like young adult fantasy is they get to the characters faster, because they know that young adults tend not to have the patience to read, 47 pages about the interior of a room. And that's perfect for me. So, yeah. So no, I don't have to, luckily, because it would be difficult. It'd be difficult to sit and talk with an author that I don't ever want to look at an author and say your book stinks.
Yeah.
Like that's, first of all, I am not the end all. I don't get to make those kinds of judgments. It may be a really good book that doesn't suit me at all.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's very fair, because, one person's treasure is another person's,
For instance,
whatever.
I absolutely loved the book, Gentleman in Moscow. Loved it. I have a friend who's an avid reader, hated it, could not stand that book. Now, he wrote another book, and it was the one of Lincoln Highway, I think is what it was called. She loved Lincoln Highway. I hated it.
Yeah.
Okay, same author. He wrote differently. Those 2 books were very substantially different in how they were written. And does that make one of those books better than the other? I don't think so. I think it means that one was better for her and one was better for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
exactly what you just said about how
100%.
wonderful it is that there are different readers of
Yes.
different interests.
Readers of different interests.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I tell people when they say things like, oh, I always finish a book even if I'm not enjoying it. And I say, don't. Put it down and go get a book you enjoy. There are so many good books out there. Why waste your time reading something that isn't good for you? All you're saying when you put a book down is, I didn't pick well for myself.
Yeah. It's not a right fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a right fit.
I mean,
Yeah.
it'd be like walking around in shoes that didn't fit and saying, well, I'm going to keep wearing these shoes because I've got them here on my feet. It's like, no, take them off. They don't fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I used to be I have to get through it. And then I really literally one time was like, why do I have to get
Why?
through it? So
Yeah. And
yeah, I'm with
the
you.
answer is
The answer
there
is let
is no
someone else
why.
read it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just I have one more question.
Mhm.
I always like to ask kind of a fun question.
Okay.
And my question is, if you could swap brains with any author for a week, who would it be? What do you think you would learn? And how do you think it would change you?
Ooh, that's really good. And I don't know that I have an immediate answer. I don't have like a favorite author. Um, you know, I this will sound like I'm just making something up out of nowhere, but I think I would like to get in Shakespeare's head. And my reason for doing it is because he writes significantly differently than I do. He had to write in this very patterned, and he made it work. And then he created words, like words that didn't exist, and so he just made them up so that he could tell his story. And I think I think I would like to get in his head, just first of all to see how that happened. Like, how does one think in iambic pentameter? Like, that alone would just be fascinating. And then I think I would like to find out what made him feel free enough to just make crap up. Like, there's no such thing as living room, so I'm going to create one so that it fits my iambic pentameter. I think I would love a little more of that ability to just say, to heck with it. I know that there are rules, but I'm not going to follow them today. I think that would be cool.
That's a
I
great answer.
really
That's
like that. That's a
actually
really
that's
good
a better
answer.
answer than I could have hoped for. That's a fabulous answer.
Oh, good.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a really great way to wrap it up. Teri, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been a wonderful chat. I want to pass the mic over to you so that you can let folks know where to find you, where to keep up with what you're doing, anything that you've got going on coming up in the near future that you want folks to know about. The floor is yours.
Fantastic. So the best place to find me, reach me, find out about everything is to go to my website. And that's my name, terrymBrown.com. And that's Teri with one R. There you can find all of my books, including 2 short story anthologies, Feisty Deeds and Feisty Deeds 2. And then I have another short story anthology coming out in May called Carolina Shores. So that's going to be another one that's out. I have a book called Peg Unhinged that will be coming out as well. You can find my podcasts there. I also am having what I'm calling a bite-sized podcast starting in January, and it will be authors reading the first paragraph of their novel with the question of, would you add this to your TBR list? And so I'm calling it the book hook, and that will start in January. And yeah, please sign up for my newsletter. I put out a newsletter twice a month. Once is books that I've read, and once is just news about me and things that are going on. And all my social media is there as well. Like, literally, if you go there, you can even read my blog that I kept the whole way across the United States. It's all in one space, www.terrymBrown.com.
I love that.
That's
There's
fascinating.
so much exciting stuff
Yeah.
going on with you, Teri, and
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to keep up with everything going on with you, and I think that our listeners will probably be feeling just the same as I am.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
We'll
All
see you
right.
next time, Teri.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teri. Bye. So what'd you think?
Oh, that was really, really cool for me. I think that Teri's writing actually I know that, like, we talked about how your writing sort of runs in parallel, but you guys have so many differences. I
Mhm.
feel like her writing reminds me in some ways of my creative process as an
Mm.
actor and as a screenwriter. It was really, really fascinating to hear her talk about, like, how personified her characters are. That's a really big thing for me in my work. But then just the big thing with her is just how much she does,
Yeah.
and
Ah.
does at a high level.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah,
Talking about, she's
5
like,
books in 3 years.
yeah, and she's like, yeah, I sleep 8 hours, and then pretty much every minute of my
Yeah.
waking time is scheduled out for stuff that I'm doing. That's
Not a lot of
crazy.
this.
Not a lot of no.
this.
There's no scrolling
Mm-mm.
scrolling on social media. There's no just like vegging out. It's like
Well, actually, that's not exactly true because she says, sometimes when she is kind of stuck or whatever, she'll just go for a walk in nature. So
Yes,
it's
but-
not like she's
yeah.
working. She's
but that's different from like doom scrolling and
oh yeah,
like
yeah,
whatever.
But I mean,
like she's doing
but that
something
is definitely
active.
relax. No, it's
Yeah.
relaxing though, right? She's taking time to recreate,
Well,
to
yeah.
recreate, and to find that energy. It's not like she's work.
Yeah, but it's still a positive thing.
Of course, it's a
like
positive thing.
going
Oh,
for
so
a
you're
walk.
saying scrolling is a negative thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no benefit. There's no benefit to you doom scrolling. There's
No.
a benefit for you going and taking a walk in nature.
Absolutely,
Yeah. That's what I mean.
But it's not necessarily like
No.
doing in the traditional sense of doing stuff.
Yeah.
And she also, we didn't talk about it, but she's the grandmother to 13 grandkids. She dressed up for Halloween and she's doing the Christmas thing, and she's an active, involved grandparent. It's
Yeah.
like, so she actually she lives a very balanced, she's got a good work-life balance.
Yeah.
She lives it's a very healthy approach to things. She's not like a workaholic who's she's just very productive.
She's very productive, and she doesn't burn time
She
wastefully.
doesn't burn time. No, she's not wasteful about it at all. And I love the creative process that she's got. I mean,
Yeah.
she's just, everything to her is in service to her characters.
Yes.
And I think that is the core of her process.
Well, I don't even know that it's in service to her characters. I think that her characters, like that her characters are leading her.
Yeah.
It's less so in service to them and more so in, I don't know what the right word is, but like in well, I guess in service to that, they're truly in service.
And truly in service to them. Absolutely. And I also like that her process is very much inspiration driven.
Yeah.
It's inspiration. She doesn't sit down. We've had like Robert Blake Whitehill. He sits
from
down
season one,
from season one, and he was a great finale episode. He sits down and he writes a certain number of words or for a certain number of time, and he does that every day, and then he gets his books done, and she's like, yeah, I just wait till the inspiration hits, and then I do a 48-hour marathon.
Yeah.
It's like, and then I'll write for 6 weeks because I don't think of anything.
He's like, I've got nothing.
It's just so inspiration driven. It's really fascinating.
I keep on thinking about that. The play that the shark is broken. The one about the actors in Jaws.
Yeah.
I keep on thinking about
The
that
shark is broken
with
again.
how she with how she personifies her characters and just. She's like, yeah, they're just sitting waiting for me to be
Tapping
ready.
their foots.
They're
Come
tapping
on,
their feet,
hurry
waiting
up.
for me to come to the conclusion that they've already come to.
Exactly.
And I really love that. It really tickled me.
Mhm. Yeah. I really did enjoy that. And I read all of her book reviews, and I just can't read as many books as she. I just don't know how she does that. I would love to read as many books as she reads, but then I wouldn't be doing anything else. So I'm definitely impressed by how much she can do with that.
It's very impressive, and it's been a very exciting episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us for this episode with Teri Brown. We're so glad you joined us, and we're excited for you to join us again next week for another exciting guest. So in the meantime, make sure to like, subscribe, turn on your post notifications wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast so you never miss a new upload. And with all that being said, Allie,
sign up for Teri's newsletter, especially if you are a book lover. And until next time, we will see you on So What's Your Process?
Bye-bye.